So boys still dominate the game. Hockey Canada wanted to know why that is, so it formed a steering committee to address the barriers girls face. Gillian Apps is the committee chair. She played with the Canadian national hockey team that won 3 gold medals in a row at the Olympic Games, and she's our guest today on the podcast. Gillian, welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So I think a lot of people thought tides were turning with the number of girls playing hockey, but that's not the whole story, hey?
Yeah, I think, and don't get me wrong, there's a ton of excitement around women's hockey in Canada right now. And, you hear people talking about the PWHL and you see people on the streets wearing some of the team's gear. And it's really exciting. And the games are packed. And I think it's a very exciting time for women's hockey. But there's still work to be done. And I think that's the important piece of how can we make women's hockey for all girls and women that are playing or involved in the game across Canada better? And how can we look to identify some of the pain points that families are feeling or young girls that maybe just are starting or deciding to play hockey? How can we identify those and try to fix them and make the game more enjoyable and accessible for people across the country?
Hockey Canada has set some goals, some targets, and it looks like they're not going to meet them. How do you react when you realize that is the reality?
Well, I don't think the reality is that they're not going to meet them. I think the reality is there's work to be done in order for that to happen. And I think that's exactly why, myself and the steering committee that we have together and some of the employees at Hockey Canada are working quite hard in the background to try to understand how we can help Hockey Canada and the country meet those goals of having as many girls as possible, not only playing hockey, but also staying involved. So, you mentioned girls starting to play and then leaving, or, that's something that we need to look into. But also, like, when people stop playing, can they stay involved? Can women and girls stay involved as a coach or as an official, as a fan? And how do we make that whole experience and their connection to the game a great one for their entire life?
I think I read that it's 1 in 5 players who are girls right now. So what are some of the roadblocks, the barriers? Hockey Canada did come out with this report, so it's something that you've been looking into. What did that reveal?
Yeah, I think there were 6 barriers that were outlined in the paper, and really probably no surprise to people. Things from the structure, whether that's scheduling or how organizations sort of field their teams, to equity and ice allocation. That's always a difficult one, and really different from province to province. We policy and governance, education and training. That's from a player's perspective or as an official or a coach. How can we use data to really help, like I said, sort of better understand where some of the pain points are for families and players, and help sort of use that data to inform our decisions and our recommendations. And then lastly, just, celebration and visibility. I think the PWHL is a great example of visibility where, when I played in the CWHL, and that's something where on any given night, we may have had 15 Olympians playing in the game, and it was in a small rink, in Ontario or Quebec or Alberta, and there was maybe just our parents, our friends in the stands. And so now it's amazing to think that not only are the arenas full, but you can turn on YouTube or you can turn on your TV and you can watch these games. And there's TV coverage, there's broadcast rights. It's amazing to see, and I think you're able to sort of become a fan, and the visibility is a crucial piece of that.
I want to ask you about equity in ice time. So little Kenzie talking about having to get up early, and that was difficult for her, 6-7 years old, and up before the sun comes up. And that's something that in Saskatchewan we talk about a lot. There's just not a lot of ice time available to new teams. So how does something like access to ice time, how might that potentially affect girls?
Yeah, that's a big one. And I think, and it really is different from, all the way down to like the community level. And some places there's sort of legacy contracts in place where a certain organization has always had an ice slot and anyone else has to sort of fill in beside it. And I think that's what we're trying to understand is how can we better understand the ice allocation? And then also, what is the opportunity for new arenas? Like, where is there funding or government support, or how can we, help address this issue? And I certainly don't have the answers right now. I think this is a big thing that our group is looking at, and not looking at in just sort of a haphazard way, but really with a strategic approach of how can we help and how can we help the problem, and it will ultimately be better for everyone who plays hockey, because more ice is better. And there's also ways to think about like creative solutions. There's a lot of synthetic ice where people are doing skill sessions where it's like shooting and you don't necessarily need ice. And I don't know, it's interesting and some out of the box thinking, but I think the early morning ice sessions are probably not necessarily just a female problem. That's a story as old as time. People like to tell those stories of getting up early before school, and it's part of sort of the magic of hockey. But
the legacy contracts that you're talking about, like that could be a senior men's league getting prime time, ice time, and a new group of young girls. Like, where are they going to where are they going to be squeezed in? That's kind of what you're getting at here, right?
A little bit, yeah. Or even just like in towns or cities before a women's team was started, the boys organizations had the ice time, and now there's a girls organization. So how do they find time to get on the ice, and what ice times are they getting? And so as you can see, it really is sort of different across the country, and we're just trying to figure that out and better understand how we can get more girls on the ice at times that suit a 6-year-old, and get the 9-year-olds on ice that suit a 9-year-old. And also, is there ice available for women to play in a rec league at night and have a fun night where they can go out and play hockey, and even if they're new and they've never skated before. So it's sort of, we're sort of looking at the whole gamut of really young learn to play to adult learn to play, and how can we encourage everyone and give people the opportunity to do so.
Why do you think girls quit? Like, this is an issue in all sports, that girls hit a certain age and they leave team sports. What do you think is specific to hockey?
How much time do we have? No, I'm just, I don't know. I think about that a lot because I have, 3 little kids, 2 being young girls, and would love them to want to play a team sport. I think that, there's a couple things. I think not specific to hockey, but just sport, is the early specialization. So I think there's a lot of pressure, much more than when I was young, playing for players and families to think, if my daughter or son isn't playing at the top tier when they're 8, then they're never going to make it, whatever it is, PWHL or NHL, Olympics. So we should switch and we should go to soccer. We're not going to pay the money for this if it's not going to, produce the results. So I think there's a piece of that where it gets serious really young, and part of that too takes the fun out of it. And I think that there's an element of hockey and the love of the game that's really important to keep people through it. So I'm a big proponent of not playing hockey all year round. I think had I done that as a kid, I would have been burnt out by the time I got to high school and not wanted to play. So I think that there is a tough balance as parents to sort of keeping up with the Joneses. There's a lot of specialization, summer hockey. Am I falling behind if my child's not playing all year round? Those are the hard conversations, and I don't have the answers to those. But for girls in particular, I think that there is the idea of, we'd like to sort of better understand, like, girls learn differently than boys. Is there a way that we can structure learn to play girls hockey in Canada different than learn to play boys hockey? I don't know. Is there something where we can, encourage girls to bring a friend to hockey to make them feel more comfortable, or make it a fun environment? Not to say that wouldn't be good for boys too, but that's the sort of the conversations and the research that we're doing, is trying to better understand how can we not only have girls sign up for hockey, but then want to continue to play. And I think that goes into, the structure of hockey. Like, is a 8-month season for a 7-year-old, like, is that work with families? Is that too long? If you sign up for soccer, is it 3 months and you're just testing it? I don't know. These are all the questions that we're asking about how can we make this a great experience for not only the player, but the families too. That matters, right? If you're driving, 3 hours on the weekend for a league game, that maybe doesn't work with people. So trying to better understand schedules and just the sort of experience as a whole versus just for the athlete.
You mentioned education too, and I recall having a conversation with someone who was working really hard to increase Indigenous representation in sport. And one of the ideas was to have a training module that all coaches would complete about Indigenous ways of knowing, and just to kind of, get that learning at a place where people felt like they were more informed to be more inclusive. Mm-hmm. What are you thinking about when it comes to education, and what do coaches, what do refs need to know if more girls are playing the sport?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's a great point. And it's the idea of not only having that education and training, because I think there's a lot of good stuff out there, but making that accessible and very sort of obvious where it lives. And I think, being a coach in Canada, do you have access to the things that you need in order to feel like you're doing a great job or giving the best to your athlete? As an athlete, do you have access to information? As a parent, even as a parent of a first year hockey player, or a girl or a boy, do you know what equipment they need? Do you know, like, how to put it on? Do you know how to, like, what the season's going to involve? And so there's a whole piece around that. And then as obviously it goes up into high performance, wanting to make sure that, there's a safe sport piece of it. And there's, the training for the athletes and for everyone involved. And I think, again, just being able to look at that across the country and maybe make that a little bit more streamlined and consistent province to province, and being able to mostly make it accessible for people.
What about the culture of hockey? There's been a lot of attention on toxicity, on bad behavior in hockey, and I'm wondering how much that has an impact on girls getting into the sport and how much that's on your mind.
Certainly. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of work in the past few years on trying to address some of the culture issues in hockey, and there's a lot of work to be done. I think if anyone said there wasn't, they'd be lying. But I think it's moving in the right direction, and I think you're dead on. I think parents who are deciding, are we going to put our daughter in hockey, or are we going to put them in soccer or gymnastics? And hockey doesn't have a great rep right now in terms of the culture piece. So I think that's an area that we need to continue to do a lot of work to sort of make the experience for the next generation even better than for the people who came before us.
Do you ever think we'll see an equal number of boys and girls playing hockey? Is that achievable?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. And I think, even if I look, now compared to 20 years ago, there are way more girls teams and girls organizations and little girls that are able to play for their team in their town. Whereas before they just had the option of playing boys hockey or nothing else. So, and again, I think the visibility is a big thing. There's always sort of that boost every Olympic year when girls are able to watch the Olympics and say, hey, I want to do that. But now with the PWHL, this is like another amazing thing where I hope that, young girls and boys that are watching these games, that get to go to these games with their families, are saying, hey, I want to do that. And that's sort of like a continual reminder that as a women's hockey player, you can be a professional athlete, and that's your job. And I think that that's an amazing thing.
It is an amazing thing, and that's great. But why is that not enough? Why does Hockey Canada need this steering committee on girls?
Because I think of this whole...
Hey, Leisha, I have to step out for a second. I'll just keep recording, and you can do your thing, and I'll send it later.
Having a women's professional league, that has always been a thing that we've been working towards. The players, from not just from Canada, from all over the world, have been working for this. And but there are so many different elements and pieces of the game that can be improved. And, we've touched on a few of them today, but I think just really being able to better understand those and not just having a volunteer who's working really hard to make their team better, helping those people out to say, hey, actually from Hockey Canada, we're going to help put these recommendations in place so that it makes little girls want to play hockey, want to stay in hockey, and women want to get involved or stay involved in coaching and officiating.
When are you expecting those recommendations? How much work lies ahead?
We're in the second phase right now. So right now we have a consulting firm who we've hired who are doing sort of the data and research and pulling all of that for us right now. I think we're on track, I would say, by late spring, early summer, to have the recommendations pulled together. And then it's sort of, that's the exciting part, being able to really, have a strategic roadmap to say, okay, now go. Let's see if we can actually do this. And truthfully, there are a lot of people on the steering committee that are very busy people and all, said yes right away, but myself included, it was, we're not going to do this if this is going to be something that just gets put on the shelf and there's no action. So, I really believe in this work that we're doing, and I'm hoping that it can help improve women's hockey in Canada and improve the experience for young athletes. And it's exciting.
So good to talk to you, Gillian. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.